Exposed enough financially, the issue of national health care is on the table once again. Here's some perspective you might find interesting. Now, back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. Now, one of the traditional methods for imposing statism or socialism on a people has been by way of medicine. It's very easy to disguise a medical program as a humanitarian project. Most people are a little reluctant to oppose anything that suggests medical care for people who possibly can't afford it. Now, the American people, if you put it to them about socialized medicine and gave them a chance to choose, would unhesitatingly vote against it. Let's look at Social Security itself.
Okay, John. Now, that is a completely different point of view from the percentage of Americans who have been polled on this subject. It's something like 60 to 70% of Americans are for government health care. So he just said something that was not true. Also, why would anybody vote against socialized health care if they don't have any health care? Okay, so that's 40 million right there that have no reason to vote against it, right?
Few of us disagree with the original premise that there should be some form of savings that would keep destitution from following unemployment by reason of death, disability, or old age. And to this end, Social Security was adopted. But it was never intended to supplant private savings, private insurance, pension programs of unions and industries.
Okay, John, point number 2. It was never attempted to supplant private savings, etc. Well, when the banks close and you have no money and the stock market crashes, what then, John? Because it's actually already happened once. It's called the Great Depression. So I don't see how he makes any point at all, because the opposite can happen too. I mean, where you have nothing based on the free enterprise system.
In our country, under the free enterprise system, we have seen medicine reach the greatest heights that it has in any country in the world. Today, the relationship between patient and doctor in this country is something to be envied any place.
Yeah, that's fine if you have a patient and a doctor. I mean, if you don't have a doctor, then where's your privacy? Once again, I have to keep saying, John, that you cannot just forget about the 40 million people with health care. You just cannot just write them off here. They have to have some voice in this discussion, so I'm giving him that voice.
The right to choose a doctor, the right to go from one doctor to the other. But let's also look at it from the other side, at the freedom that the doctor loses. A doctor would be reluctant to say this. Well, like you, I'm only a patient, so I can say it on his behalf. The doctor begins to lose freedoms. It's like telling a lie, and one leads to another. First,
Are you aware, John, that the majority of doctors actually favor one-payer health care? So he's just making another statement that's not true.
That the doctor can only have so many patients. They're equally divided among the various doctors by the government. But then the doctors aren't divided equally geographically. So a doctor decides he wants to practice in one town, and the government has to say to him, you can't live in that town. They already have enough doctors.
That has never been proposed under the single-payer health care. This is another statement of misfact.
To go someplace else. And from here, it's only a short step to dictating where he will go. Now, this is a freedom that I wonder whether any of us have the right to take from any human being. All of us can see what happens once you establish the precedent that the government can determine a man's working place and his working methods, determine his employment. From here, it's only a short step to all the rest of socialism, to determining his pay, and pretty soon your children won't decide when they're in school where they will go or what they'll do for a living. They'll wait for the government to tell them where they will go to work and what they will do.
An outrageous claim. Just outrageous.
What can we do about all this? Well, it turns out you and I can do a great deal. We can write our congressmen and our senators. We can say right now that we want no further encroachment on these individual liberties and freedoms. And at the moment, the key issue is we do not want socialized medicine. Now, former Representative Halleck of Indiana has said, when the American...
We already have socialized medicine, John. It's called Medicare, and it's called VA benefits. Both of those are socialized medicine. Oh, also Medicaid for the poor. So we have 3 versions of socialized medicine already in place. Medicare, VA benefits, Medicaid for the poor.
People want something from Congress, regardless of its political complexion. If they make their wants known, Congress does what the people want. So write, and if your representative writes back to you and tells you that he or she too is for free enterprise and that we have these great services and so forth that must be performed by the government, don't let them get away with it. Show them that you have not been convinced. Write another letter right back and tell them that you believe in government economy and fiscal responsibility. That you know that governments don't tax to get the money they need. Governments will always find a need for the money they get. And that you...
That is correct. That I agree with. There is a problem with keeping government accountable. I certainly agree with that.
Demand the continuation of our free enterprise system. Look, you and I can do this. The only way we can do it is by writing our congressman, even if we believe that he's on our side to begin with, write to strengthen his hand. Give him the ability to stand before his colleagues in Congress and say, I have heard from my constituents and this is what they want. Write those letters now. Call your friends and tell them to write them. Because if you don't, this program, I promise you, will pass just as surely as the sun will come up tomorrow, and behind it will come other federal programs that will invade every area of freedom as we have known it in this country.
So a wild jump there, John, from single-payer health to losing every single freedom in our country. It's outrageous, John.
Now, with the exception of the first two sentences, nothing you just heard was written by me. I was simply repeating verbatim the words of another American thinker and philosopher, although slightly edited to remove some of the references to the time in which those words were first spoken. Turns out that time was 1961, and the philosopher who had such an astute grasp on the dangers of that impending socialism was a Hollywood actor named Ronald Reagan. Now, of course,